The phone vibrated against the polished surface of my desk, a frantic buzz that cut through the quiet hum of my home office. I glanced at the caller ID. Mom? My stomach gave a familiar dull ache. It was never good news when Mom called with this particular brand of urgency. Hello? I kept my voice even, a trick learned over years of practice. Tabitha! Oh, thank God you answered. Vera's voice was a high-pitched wail, already frayed at the edges. It's Tyler. It's a disaster, a complete and utter disaster. My name is Tabitha, by the way, and Tyler, my older brother, has always been the golden child, the one destined for greatness, while I, apparently, was destined for, well, art projects. What's wrong with Tyler, Mom? I asked, already picturing him, probably pacing, his face flushed with indignation that the world wasn't bending to his will. His business, darling, his software company, it's collapsing. Everything he's worked for, everything we've invested in him, it's all going to be gone. Her voice cracked, and I could hear the genuine panic. For Tyler, of course, never for me. I leaned back in my chair, the leather cool against my skin. My office overlooked the city, a sprawling panorama of lights just beginning to twinkle as dusk settled. It was a view I'd earned, pixel by painstaking pixel. That sounds serious, I said, my tone carefully neutral. Serious? It's catastrophic. He needs a bailout, Tabitha, a significant one. He's been to every bank, called every contact. No one will help him. A bitter little smile touched my lips unseen. That's unfortunate. Unfortunate? Is that all you can say? Vera's voice sharpened. Your brother is about to lose everything. Then the inevitable pivot. I suppose. I know your little art projects don't pay much, dear, and of course, we wouldn't expect you to understand the kind of sums involved, but perhaps you know someone with actual money. Little art projects. The phrase echoed in my mind, a ghostly chorus from years past. I remembered sitting at the kitchen table, proudly showing them my first acceptance into a student art exhibition. Dad had barely glanced up from his newspaper. That's nice, Tabby, Mark had said, his tone dismissive. But Tyler just got an early acceptance into the business program. Now that's a future. Vera had beamed, ruffling Tyler's hair. Our little genius. He'll be a CEO before he's 30. She'd looked at my drawing, a detailed charcoal sketch of our old oak tree, and sighed. Perhaps you could do a nice painting of Tyler's new office when he gets it, dear. Something so corporate. Their laughter later that evening had drifted up to my bedroom. An art degree? I heard Mark scoff. What a waste of good money. She'll be lucky to sell paintings at a flea market. Rage, cold and sharp, had pricked at me then. It became a familiar companion. While Tyler was off at university, racking up debt for his prestigious business degree, which they happily paid for, I was in my cramped dorm room, then a tiny apartment teaching myself digital art. I'd sketch on cheap tablets, watch endless tutorials, my nights illuminated by the glow of the screen, fueled by instant ramen and a burning desire to prove them all wrong. When I discovered blockchain technology, a new world opened up. NFTs. It was a gamble, a leap into the unknown, but what did I have to lose? They'd already written me off. I'm afraid I don't really move in those kinds of circles, Mom, I said, pulling myself back to the present. My contacts are mostly artists. I let the word hang there, knowing how they perceived it. Vera sighed, a gust of exasperation. Yes, well, of course. It was a long shot. Mark is pulling every string he has, but Tyler is beside himself. He's put everything into this. His reputation is on the line. I thought of the small loan I'd asked Dad for years ago. Just a few $100s for professional-grade graphic software, that could have been a game changer for me. Resources are tight, Tabby, Mark had said, his brow furrowed with feigned concern. We're supporting Tyler's venture, you know. Big investments. A week later, Tyler had a new sports car, a gleaming monstrosity he claimed was for networking. The sting of that hypocrisy still felt fresh. He has one last hope, Vera continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper as if sharing a state secret. He's applied to this very exclusive, very discreet venture capital firm. Apparently, they invest in high risk, high reward tech. It's called Phoenix Capital. I straightened in my chair, my fingers, which had been idly tracing the grain of my mahogany desk, stilled. Phoenix Capital, Vera repeated, as if the name itself held some magical power. They're his only chance now. He sent in the application this morning. We're all just praying, Tabitha, praying they see his vision, his brilliance. A small, cold smile, the kind that never reached my eyes, played on my lips. Phoenix Capital, I murmured almost to myself. The city lights outside seemed to gleam with a sudden predatory intensity. Interesting choice, Tyler. What was that, dear? Nothing, Mom, I said, my voice smooth as silk. I hope it works out for him. I ended the call, the silence of my office settling back around me, heavy and charged. Phoenix Capital, my Phoenix Capital. The irony was so thick I could almost taste it, and it tasted like the sweetest revenge. The frantic call from my mother, Vera, still echoed in my ears long after I'd hung up. It's Tyler. It's a disaster, she'd wailed, her voice a symphony of maternal panic reserved exclusively for her golden boy. My brother, the supposed genius, was watching his precious software company crumble, and apparently the sky was falling. My name is Tabitha, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the family's afterthought, the quiet girl with her little art projects. Vera hadn't even pretended to think I could help financially. I know your little art projects don't pay much, dear, she'd said, the casual dismissal of familiar sting. But perhaps you know someone with actual money? The words were a direct hit, a bullseye on a wound that had never quite healed. I listened, my expression carefully neutral, a mask honed over years of similar conversations. My mind flickered back, unbidden. Dad Mark, beaming as Tyler, barely a teenager, outlined his business plan for a lawn mowing empire that never mowed a single lawn beyond our own. He's got a real head for business, that one, Mark would declare, clapping Tyler on the back. Then there was the laughter, sharp and mocking, when I announced I wanted to major in fine arts. An art degree? Mark had choked out between guffaws at the dinner table. What are you going to do with that, Tabby? Draw pretty pictures for a living? A waste of good money, if you ask me. Vera had just smiled indulgently at him, then at Tyler, as if to say, see, this is a son with ambition. Those nights, fueled by their scorn as much as by cheap ramen, I'd hunched over my second-hand laptop, teaching myself digital art, then coding, then the intricacies of blockchain. The world of NFTs was a nascent, chaotic frontier, and I dived in head first, driven by a quiet, simmering fury. While they poured their resources and hopes into Tyler's real business, I was building something else in the shadows, something they couldn't comprehend, let alone value. He has one last hope, Vera had said, her voice dropping dramatically. He's applied to this very exclusive, very discreet venture capital firm, Phoenix Capital. I'd almost laughed out loud then. Phoenix Capital, the firm I'd built from the ground up with the profits from those little art projects, the firm where I was the silent majority shareholder, the invisible hand guiding its every move. Phoenix Capital, I'd murmured after she hung up. a cold, tight smile spreading across my face. Interesting choice, Tyler. Very interesting indeed. The city lights outside my penthouse office window seemed to wink back at me, sharing the secret. The irony was a rich, dark wine I savored in the silence of my office. Phoenix Capital. My mother's desperate last-ditch hope for her precious son. My company, the one I'd built from the ashes of their dismissal, brick by digital brick. I swiveled my chair to face the wall-mounted screen displaying Ephemeral Bloom, the NFT that had changed everything. It was a swirling vortex of color and light, a digital flower constantly blooming and decaying in an infinite loop. The art world had called it groundbreaking. The crypto world had called it a gold mine. It had sold for a figure that would have made Mark's eyes water, a figure that had allowed me to quietly, strategically become a player. My first major investment had been in a struggling biotech startup, run by a brilliant woman everyone else had dismissed as too unconventional. Sounded familiar. When that paid off spectacularly, I knew what I wanted to do. Not just create, but empower. Phoenix Capital was born with my trusted partner, Kendall, as its public face, its COO. She was the sharp, articulate front, while I remained the silent, unseen architect. My private line buzzed. Kendall. You will not believe whose application just landed on my desk, Kendall said, her voice crisp and amused. No preamble needed. That was Kendall. All business, but with an appreciation for the absurd. Let me guess, I said, leaning back, a genuine smile finally gracing my lips. Does it involve a software company on the verge of implosion and a CEO with an ego bigger than his credit line? Kendall laughed. Tyler Matthews in the digital flesh, or rather in a very poorly formatted PDF? Honestly, Tabitha, it looks like he put it together in an hour between panic attacks. Is it as bad as we imagined? Worse, she confirmed. The financials are a horror show, the projections are pure fantasy, and the tone, let's just say humility, isn't a word in his vocabulary. She paused. He's requesting an emergency funding round, 50 million. I whistled softly. He always did dream big, even when reality was smacking him in the face. So, what's the play, boss? Kendall asked. Standard rejection, or do you want to personalize it? I thought of Vera's tearful plea, Mark's bluster, Tyler's inevitable self-pity. Let's stick to protocol for now, Kendall. Standard due diligence. Let him sweat a bit. Give me the full report when it's ready. You got it, though I suspect due diligence might be dignifying this mess a little too much. Probably, I agreed. But let's see what skeletons fall out of his digital closet. A few hours later, my encrypted messenger pinged. It was Kendall. Kendall, you need to see this. Just came through to the General Phoenix Capital Urgent Inquiries inbox. Attached was a forwarded email to the Esteemed Investment Committee, Phoenix Capital. From Tyler Matthews, CEO, Innovatech Solutions. Subject, urgent, reconsideration of funding application, a matter of mutual benefit. Dear Sirs, Madams, while I await your doubtless positive response to my recent application, I feel compelled to reach out directly. Innovatech Solutions is not merely another tech startup, it is the future. My projections, while ambitious, are entirely achievable with the right strategic partners. I understand Phoenix Capital values discretion, as do I. However, it might be pertinent for you to know that my family, the Matthews, have long been respected figures in the business community. My father, Mark Matthews, has connections that run deep. A partnership with Innovatech would not only yield incredible financial returns, but also open doors that might otherwise remain closed. Frankly, rejecting a venture of this caliber, especially one with my backing and familial connections, would be a significant oversight. I trust you will make the wise decision. I am available to discuss this further at your earliest convenience. My schedule is, of course, demanding, but for Phoenix Capital, I will make time. Sincerely, Tyler Matthews, CEO and future industry leader. I read it twice, a slow burn starting in my chest. The sheer, unadulterated arrogance, the veiled threat, the casual name dropping as if Mark Matthews was a magic password. He had no idea who he was talking to, no concept of the power I now wielded. Kendall, I typed back, my fingers flying across the keyboard. He really is his father's son, isn't he? Kendall, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. It rolled right into a ditch. Proceed with the due diligence, Kendall, I replied, and dig deep. I want to know everything. Kendall, with pleasure. He thought he was so clever, so intimidating. He was about to find out what happened when a dismissed little art project grew teeth and wings. All right, Kendall, I said into the secure line the next morning, a fresh cup of coffee steaming beside my keyboard. Let's treat Mr. Matthews' ambitious proposal with the seriousness it apparently deserves. Full due diligence, standard procedure. Don't cut any corners. You mean you actually want me to spend billable hours on this train wreck? Kendall's voice was laced with playful disbelief. Every last one, I confirmed. I want a clear picture. No stone unturned. Let's see if there's any actual Innovatech and Innovatech solutions, or if it's just Innova mess. Roger that. I'll have my team start dissecting the data he provided. Preliminary scans suggest it's mostly buzzwords and bad spreadsheets. A few days later, Kendall's icon popped up on my screen for a video call. Her expression was grim. You wanted the full picture, Tabitha. Well, it's not pretty. She shared her screen and a series of charts and figures filled my monitor. Red, lots of red. The burn rate is astronomical, Kendall explained, pointing to a sharply declining graph. He's been hemorrhaging cash for months, lavish office space he couldn't afford, overpaid executives with no discernible skills, marketing campaigns that yielded zero return on investment. So, incompetence on a grand scale? I asked, though it wasn't really a question. And reckless spending, Kendall added. Look at these expense reports. Client entertainment at five-star restaurants almost daily. Team building trips to Aspen, first-class flights everywhere for a company that hasn't turned a profit ever. As Kendall detailed the financial carnage, a specific memory tightened my chest. I was 20, my art scholarship barely covering tuition, let alone supplies. I'd found a revolutionary new digital painting software, one that could elevate my work, but the license fee was a few $100s. A fortune to me then. I'd swallowed my pride and asked Mark for a loan. A loan, Tabby? He'd said, not even looking up from the quarterly reports of his own modest import-export business for art software. He'd sighed, a sound heavy with disappointment. Resources are tight right now, honey, really tight. We're funneling a lot into Tyler's new car. He needs something respectable for his summer internship, networking. The respectable car turned out to be a brand new BMW coupe. I'd seen Tyler preening in it, sunglasses on, music blasting, on his way to network at the local country club. Resources are tight had become a bitter joke I told only to myself. I'd ended up working double shifts at a campus coffee shop for 2 months to afford that software. And the projections he sent us, Kendall was saying, pulling me back, pure fiction, based on market assumptions that have no basis in reality. He's either delusional or thinks we're idiots. Probably a bit of both, I murmured, another memory surfacing. I just won a regional award for a digital piece, my first real recognition. I'd excitedly called home, hoping for a crumb of acknowledgement. Vera had answered. "Oh, that's nice, dear," she'd said, her voice distracted. "Listen, Tyler just aced his corporate finance midterm. His professor says he's a natural. We're so proud." "But, Mom, this award." "Yes, yes, an award. That's lovely. But, Tabitha, when are you going to start thinking about a real job? Something stable? All this art stuff is fine as a hobby, but you can't build a life on it." A real job. The words had felt like a slap. I looked at the damning evidence of Tyler's failure spread across my screen. The boy who could do no wrong, the genius destined for greatness, had run his real business straight into the ground through sheer arrogance and ineptitude. My resolve, already firm, hardened into something like granite. This wasn't just business anymore. This was balancing the scales. "Anything else?" I asked Kendall, my voice colder than I intended. Kendall hesitated for a moment. "There is one thing. It's probably nothing. Just an anomaly in the early expense reports. From about 5 years ago, right when he was supposedly getting Innovatech off the ground." "What is it?" "A fairly substantial payment listed under marketing consultancy services. $10,000. Paid out to a shell corporation that dissolved a month later. Untraceable, basically. So, shady accounting isn't exactly a shock at this point." "No," Kendall said slowly, "but the timing is interesting. It was processed the same week that small gallery, the one run by, what was her name? Raquel? The one that was about to give you your first solo show. The week it was suddenly hit by that anonymous smear campaign online, the one that forced her to cancel your exhibition. My blood ran cold. Raquel's gallery, the vicious anonymous online attacks claiming she sold fakes, that she was a fraud. It had destroyed her reputation locally, and my show, my first real break, had vanished with it. I remembered the devastation, the feeling that someone had deliberately, maliciously snuffed out my tiny spark of hope. "Pull up everything you can find on that payment, Kendall," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Everything." "Kendall," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, the chill from her last revelation still clinging to me. "I need you to dig into that marketing consultancy payment. I don't care how cold the trail is. Use every resource we have. I want to know who was behind that shell corporation." "It's 5 years old, Tabitha," Kendall said gently, "and designed to be a dead end. But I'll see what our forensic accountants can unearth. Don't get your hopes up too high." "Just try," I urged, a knot tightening in my stomach. The cancellation of that show, it had nearly broken me. Raquel, the gallery owner, had been so enthusiastic, so supportive. She'd seen something in my early raw digital pieces that no one else had, certainly not my family. The gallery was small, but it was a start, a validation. Then, overnight, the anonymous online attacks began, vicious, personal, and utterly baseless. Raquel, a kind woman in her late 40s who'd poured her life savings into her little gallery, was accused of everything from selling forgeries to tax evasion. The local arts community, spooked and gossipy, had distanced themselves. My show was canceled amidst the fallout. Raquel had called me, her voice choked with tears, apologizing profusely. She'd had to close the gallery a few months later, her reputation in tatters. I remembered sitting in my tiny apartment staring at the rejection email, polite, regretful, but final. The world had felt bleak, my dreams dissolving into pixels of despair. I'd almost given up then, almost listened to Vera and Mark's persistent advice to get a real job. What was the point of creating if the world or someone in it was so determined to stop me? Days turned into a week. Kendall's team, A crack unit of digital sleuths and financial wizards I'd handpicked for Phoenix Capital chased shadows and whispers through the labyrinth of shell companies and offshore accounts. The direct link was elusive, designed to be, but the circumstantial evidence began to pile up, forming a sickeningly clear picture. We can't prove it definitively in a court of law, not without a confession, Kendall finally reported, her voice tight with controlled anger. But the money trail, what little we can piece together, leads back to an associate of Tyler's from his university days, a guy known for fixing problems discreetly. The timing, the amount, the method. It all points one way, Tabitha. She didn't need to say his name. Tyler. My brother, the golden child, the one who supposedly had it all. Why? Why would he do that to me? To Raquel? Was it simple jealousy that his useless little sister was about to get a sliver of recognition? Or was it something darker, a casual cruelty, a need to ensure he remained the only star in the family firmament? The memory of his smug face, his easy confidence, the way he'd always subtly belittled my ambitions while basking in our parents' adoration, now took on a sinister new dimension. He hadn't just been dismissive, he'd been actively malevolent. He hadn't just failed to support me, he'd tried to sabotage me. A white hot rage, purer and more intense than any I'd ever felt, coursed through me. This wasn't just about their years of neglect and mockery anymore. This wasn't just about proving them wrong with my success. This was about a deliberate, calculated act of destruction aimed at my nascent career, at my spirit. He had tried to extinguish my light before it even had a chance to shine. Any lingering shred of familial obligation, any thought of a detached, purely business decision regarding Phoenix Capital's investment evaporated. This was personal, deeply, irrevocably personal. The polite rejection I had initially envisioned now felt wholly inadequate. He deserved more than a standard form letter. He deserved to understand the full scope of what he had done and who he had done it to. I looked out at the city, no longer seeing the twinkling lights of opportunity, but a landscape for a battle I hadn't known I was fighting for years. The sweet satisfaction I'd anticipated from simply denying him the bailout now tasted like ashes. What I wanted, what I needed, was not just to see him fail, but to be the architect of that failure, just as he had tried to be the architect of mine. Kendall, I said, my voice calm but with an edge of steel that made even her, my unflappable COO, pause. The due diligence on Innovatech Solutions, is it complete? As complete as it needs to be, she replied. It's a categorical disaster. No redeeming qualities. Good. I took a deep breath, the decision crystallizing in my mind, cold and hard and absolute. Reject the application. Make it cold, standard, and final. No room for appeal. Consider it done, Kendall said. And Kendall? Yes, Tabitha? No explanations. Not a word beyond the official rejection. Let him wonder. Let them all wonder. A beat of silence, then. Understood. The desire for revenge, once a simmering ember, now burned with the intensity of a forge. He wanted Phoenix Capital. He was about to feel its fire. The email from Phoenix Capital, Kendall assured me, was a masterpiece of corporate indifference, concise, impersonal, and utterly final. After careful consideration of your proposal, it read, Phoenix Capital has decided not to proceed with an investment in Innovatech Solutions at this time. We wish you success in your future endeavors. Not a word more, not a hint of why. The fallout was immediate. My phone started ringing less than an hour later. Vera. Tabitha, you won't believe this, those vultures at Phoenix Capital, they rejected Tyler. Her voice was a shriek of pure indignation. No explanation, nothing, just a cold, heartless email. How could they? Don't they know who he is? I let her rant, offering murmurs of what I hoped sounded like polite sympathy. Oh, Mom, that's terrible. After he got his hopes up. Inside, a grim satisfaction was blooming, dark and potent. Terrible? It's a catastrophe. He was counting on this. We were all counting on this. He's in his room, Tabitha. He won't come out. He's just broken. Her voice hitched. He keeps saying it's a conspiracy, that someone powerful is out to get him. He has no idea how right he is, I thought, but said, That sounds awful. Is there anything? What will he do? That's just it, Vera cried. What can he do? He needs money, Tabitha, real money. You have your savings, don't you? From your art things? Maybe you could lend him something just to tide him over. He'll pay you back, of course, with interest, once he gets back on his feet. The audacity! After years of dismissing my art things, now she thought they might be a piggy bank for her failing son. The irony was almost painful. Mom, the kind of money Tyler needs for his company. It's not something I just have lying around from selling a few pictures. I kept my tone regretful, playing the part of the dutiful, if financially insignificant daughter. But you must have something, she pressed. Anything would help. Your brother is falling apart. Mark is calling everyone he knows, trying to find out who really owns Phoenix Capital. He thinks some old business rival is pulling strings, trying to ruin Tyler out of spite. I nearly choked. Mark, the man who prided himself on his connections, was now scrambling in the dark, completely oblivious that the rival was his own flesh and blood, the daughter whose ambitions he crushed without a second thought. The power dynamic had not just shifted, it had inverted completely. I held all the cards, and they didn't even know I was in the game. I really wish I could help, Mom, I said, injecting a note of helplessness into my voice. But business financing on that scale is way out of my league. Vera sighed, a long, shuddering breath of defeat. I suppose you're right. It was a foolish thought. It's just, we're so desperate. She sniffled. Mark is meeting an old contact tomorrow, someone who supposedly knows someone who might have an in at Phoenix Capital. He's trying to arrange a meeting, an appeal. It's a long shot. The days that followed were filled with increasingly frantic, one-sided updates from Vera. Tyler was apparently blaming his CFO, his marketing team, the global economy, a particularly nasty horoscope, everyone but himself. Mark, meanwhile, was obsessively trying to uncover the identity of Phoenix Capital's shadowy owner. He was convinced it was Howard Sterling, a competitor he'd undercut on a deal a decade ago, or perhaps that upstart, Richardson, who'd always been jealous of Tyler's potential. I listened to it all with a detached fascination, like watching a particularly dramatic soap opera unfold, except the actors were my family, and I was the secret scriptwriter. Then, late one evening, my phone rang again. It was Mark, a rare occurrence. His voice, usually so full of bluster and self-importance, sounded strained, but there was an undercurrent of triumph. Tabitha, your mother told me about Phoenix Capital rejecting Tyler. A damn shame. Bad business decision on their part, if you ask me. It's very unfortunate, Dad, I said. Well, I haven't been idle, he announced, his voice swelling with a hint of its old pomposity. I've been working my contacts. It wasn't easy. These Phoenix people are tight-lipped. But I managed to get through to someone important. My heart gave a little thump. Oh? Yes. Turns out the key decision maker, the one who signs off on everything, is surprisingly accessible if you know the right people. And I, your father, still know the right people. He chuckled, a dry, self-congratulatory sound. We have a meeting, Tabitha, an in-person appeal, tomorrow afternoon. We're going to save Tyler. We're going to walk in there and make them see sense. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. He had no idea. None of them had any idea. That's Wonderful news, Dad. I managed, my voice remarkably steady. Where is this meeting? Their main office, downtown. Very impressive address, I must say. He sounded almost gleeful. Tyler, your mother and I are all going. We need to present a united front. Show them the Matthews family means business. A cold, predatory smile spread across my face. Well, Dad, I said softly, I wish you the very best of luck. He hung up, full of renewed hope, completely unaware he was walking straight into the lion's den, and I, the lion, was very, very hungry. The next morning I was in the Phoenix Capital offices before anyone else. The silence of the top floor was broken only by the distant hum of the city waking up below. I walked through the reception area, its minimalist elegance designed to impress and intimidate, and headed straight for the main boardroom. The summit room, Kendall had christened it, with its panoramic city views and a single massive slab of polished obsidian for a table. It was a room that screamed power, a room where fortunes were made and lost. Perfect. Kendall, I said, calling her as I surveyed the space. The Matthews family is coming for an appeal meeting this afternoon. Mark apparently pulled some strings and thinks he's meeting with the key decision maker. Kendall let out a low whistle. Oh, this is going to be good. He has no idea it's you he's appealing to? Not a clue, I confirmed, a grim smile playing on my lips. He thinks he's about to charm his way into saving Tyler's disastrous company. He even mentioned presenting a united family front. The delusion is strong with that one, Kendall chuckled. So how do you want to play this? Do I greet them? Do I sit in? No, I said. This is something I need to do alone. Just ensure the summit room is prepped. Water, notepads, the usual. And make sure the reception desk knows to send them straight up when they arrive. No delays, no intermediaries. Consider it done. Are you sure you're okay, Tabitha? This is a lot. I'm more than okay, Kendall, I said, my voice firm. I've been preparing for this moment my whole life, even if I didn't know it. Back in my private office, which was connected to the summit room by a discreet internal door, I considered my outfit. I rarely indulged in overt displays of wealth, but today felt different. I chose a tailored suit, a deep charcoal gray, the fabric whispering expense with every movement. Beneath it, a silk blouse in a vibrant sapphire blue, the color of my most successful NFT series after Ephemeral Bloom. Minimal jewelry, just a pair of diamond studs that had cost more than Tyler's first respectable car. It wasn't about vanity, it was about armor. It was about showing them in a language they understood, the language of money and success, exactly who they had dismissed. A wave of anticipation, sharp and electric, washed over me. It wasn't nervousness, but a focused, steely calm. I thought of Logan, my old art professor, the only one who'd truly seen my potential back then. He'd found me one afternoon, staring despondently at a blank digital canvas after another casual dismissal from my parents about my hobby. Don't let them grind you down, Tabitha, Logan had said, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. He'd leaned over my shoulder, looking at the hesitant lines on the screen. Your art has power, real power. It speaks a language some people aren't equipped to hear, but that doesn't make it any less potent. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. He'd been the one to subtly nudge me towards exploring digital scarcity, the nascent world of NFTs. It's a new frontier, Tabitha, he'd muse. A way for digital artists to claim their value. Might be worth a look. How right he'd been. My art did have power, just not in the way either of us could have imagined back then. It had the power to build an empire and now the power to dismantle one. I spent the next few hours reviewing the final due diligence report on Innovatech, not because I needed more convincing, but to fuel the coal fire within me. Every inflated projection, every misspent dollar, every arrogant assumption Tyler had made was a testament to the flawed foundation upon which my family had built their expectations of him and their dismissal of me. The intercom on my desk buzzed, a sharp, crisp sound that cut through my thoughts. It was the receptionist from the main lobby, her voice professionally serene. "Ms. Matthews, your guests have arrived. A Mr. Mark Matthews, a Mrs. Vera Matthews, and a Mr. Tyler Matthews." I took a slow, deep breath. The air in the room seemed to crackle. This was it, the culmination of years of silent resentment, of quiet striving, of carefully laid plans. "Thank you, Anya," I said, my voice even. "Send them into the summit room. I'll be right there." I stood, smoothed down my jacket, and walked towards the internal door. My reflection in the dark glass of the connecting panel showed a woman I barely recognized from the ramen-fueled nights of my past, poised, confident, and utterly in control. The girl who had craved their approval was long gone. In her place stood the phoenix, and she was ready to watch them burn. I pushed open the heavy door to the summit room and stepped inside. They were already there, clustered awkwardly near the entrance, looking small and out of place beneath the soaring ceilings and amidst the opulent minimalist decor. Mark stood slightly in front, trying to project an air of command that didn't quite land. Vera hovered beside him, clutching her handbag like a shield, her eyes darting nervously around the room. Tyler slouched behind them, his usual arrogance deflated, replaced by a sullen, defeated look. His expensive suit looked rumpled, his tie askew. They saw me. Confusion flickered across Mark's face first, quickly followed by a patronizing smile. Good afternoon. We're here to see the head of Phoenix Capital, Mark Matthews," he announced, extending a hand as if I were a junior assistant sent to fetch them coffee. Vera peered at me, a faint line of puzzlement creasing her brow. "Tabitha, what are you doing here, dear? Are you working here now? That's nice." Tyler just grunted, barely making eye contact, lost in his own world of misery. I ignored Mark's outstretched hand and walked calmly to the head of the enormous obsidian table, taking the single, imposing chair that dominated the room. I gestured vaguely to the chairs opposite. "Please, sit." They exchanged uncertain glances, then slowly, hesitantly, took their seats. Mark cleared his throat, shuffling some papers he'd pulled from a worn briefcase. "Well, as I said, we're here for our appeal. My son, Tyler Matthews, CEO of Innovatech Solutions, has submitted a proposal, and frankly, we were shocked by the initial rejection. A company with this much potential—" He launched into his impassioned plea, a well-rehearsed speech about market disruption, synergy, and Tyler's unparalleled genius. Vera chimed in with tearful interjections about how hard Tyler had worked, how much this meant to him, to them. Tyler mumbled a few excuses about unforeseen market difficulties and unfair competition, his voice flat and unconvincing. I let them finish. I watched them, my expression unreadable, a mask of cool professionalism. The silence stretched heavy and uncomfortable when Mark finally ran out of steam. He looked at me expectantly, a hopeful, almost desperate glint in his eyes. "So you'll take our appeal to your superiors? You'll tell them what a mistake they've made?" I leaned forward slightly, my hands resting lightly on the cool, smooth surface of the table. "There's no need for that, Mark." My voice was quiet, but it carried in the cavernous room. "There are no superiors to take it to." Confusion clouded their faces again. "What do you mean?" Vera asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I mean," I said, my gaze sweeping over each of them, lingering for a moment on Tyler's downcast face, "that I am Tabitha Matthews, the founder and majority shareholder of Phoenix Capital." The color drained from Mark's face as if a plug had been pulled. His jaw literally dropped. Vera gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. Tyler's head snapped up, his eyes, for the first time, focusing on me with a dawning, horrified understanding. You? Mark whispered, his voice hoarse. But your art, your little projects. My little projects, as you so fondly called them, Dad, I said, my voice hardening, have apparently done quite well, well enough to build this. I gestured around the opulent room, well enough to decide the fate of real businesses like Tyler's. I let that sink in, enjoying the stunned, horrified silence. Then I began. Calmly, methodically, I laid out their years of dismissal, their mockery of my useless degree, the constant comparison to their golden boy. I recounted Mark's refusal of a small loan for art software while buying Tyler a sports car. I reminded Vera of her advice to find a real job while I was winning my first awards. Then I turned to Tyler. And you, I said, my voice dropping, lace with ice. Your company, Innovatech, it's a disaster. Reckless spending, gross incompetence, and projections based on pure fantasy. I detailed the findings of Kendall's due diligence, watching his face crumble as I listed his failures. But it wasn't just your business incompetence that sealed your fate with Phoenix Capital, Tyler. I continued, my eyes boring into his. You didn't just doubt me or dismiss me like they did. I paused, letting the accusation hang in the air. You actively tried to destroy my chances 5 years ago. Raquel Rodriguez's gallery, my first show, the anonymous smear campaign that ruined her and almost made me give up art entirely. Tyler flinched as if struck. Vera looked from me to him, a horrified question in her eyes. Mark just stared, speechless. That $10,000 marketing consultancy payment from Innovatech's early days? Untraceable, you thought, but not untraceable enough. My voice was cold, devoid of emotion. You sabotaged me, Tyler, out of jealousy or malice, or perhaps just because you couldn't stand the thought of your useless little sister achieving anything on her own. Their scorn, their dismissal, I said, my gaze returning to Mark and Vera. It fueled me. Every condescending remark, every comparison, every time you told me my passion was worthless, it just made me work harder. My hobby built this. My hobby just decided the fate of your real business. I leaned back in my chair. Phoenix Capital will not be investing in failure, and it certainly will not be bailing out saboteurs. The answer is no. The rejection stands. Vera finally found her voice a choked whisper. Tabitha, please. Your family. I looked at her, my expression like stone. You had a strange way of showing it, Mom. I stood up, the expensive fabric of my suit making no sound. The meeting is over. I turned and walked towards the internal door, leaving them sitting there, stunned and shattered in the opulent tomb of their ambitions. The silence I left behind was more devastating than any shout. The click of the door closing behind me was a definitive sound, an exclamation point on a chapter of my life I had just slammed shut. In the quiet sanctuary of my private office, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. A profound sense of release washed over me, so potent it was almost dizzying. It wasn't joy, not exactly. It was something colder, sharper, the chilling satisfaction of justice served, of scales finally irrevocably balanced. Kendall appeared a few minutes later, her expression carefully neutral. They're gone, she said softly. Security escorted them out. No incidents, just shock. Thank you, Kendall, I said, sinking into my chair, for everything. Are you all right? She asked. Her usual businesslike demeanor softened with genuine concern. I think so, I replied, surprised to find that I was. Better than all right, actually. Liberated. The news of Innovatech Solutions' complete and utter collapse hit the financial news feeds within days. Promising tech startup implodes amidst rumors of mismanagement. One headline blared. Tyler, it turned out, had been playing fast and loose, with more than just projections. Kendall's team, with a little anonymous prompting from me, had flagged certain irregularities that were now attracting the attention of regulatory bodies. Bankruptcy was the least of his worries. Potential fraud charges loomed, and Raquel Rodriguez, armed with a meticulously compiled anonymous dossier detailing the source of the smear campaign against her gallery, was suddenly very interested in talking to a lawyer. I made sure she had the best. Vera and Mark tried to contact me, of course, voicemails filled with desperate pleas, tearful apologies, bewildered questions. I listened to the first few, then deleted the rest unheard. What was there to say? They had built their world on the pedestal they'd placed Tyler upon, and now that pedestal had crumbled, taking their world with it. Their calls eventually dwindled, then stopped. The silence was a balm. The revenge was sweet, undeniably, intoxicatingly sweet. It hadn't magically erased the years of hurt, the sting of their casual cruelty, but it had cauterized the wound. There was a clean, sharp finality to it that was deeply satisfying. I felt no regret, only a stark understanding that actions have consequences, and theirs had finally, spectacularly, caught up with them. With the Matthews family drama relegated to a closed chapter, I threw myself back into my work with a renewed, almost ferocious energy. Phoenix Capital continued to thrive, backing innovators who, like me, had been overlooked or underestimated. I even started taking a more public role, shedding some of the anonymity. There was a certain power in being seen, in owning my success. One afternoon, Kendall walked into my office, a small, enigmatic smile on her face. "There's someone here to see you, an artist, Raquel Rodriguez. She owns a new gallery downtown, Phoenix Rising Arts. Funny coincidence, right? She said she just wanted to thank the anonymous benefactor who helped her get back on her feet and feature emerging digital artists. I had anonymously funded Raquel's new, much larger gallery space a few weeks prior, a quiet act that felt like closing a different kind of circle. "Send her in, Kendall," I said, a genuine smile touching my lips. Raquel entered, her eyes bright, her handshake firm. She didn't know the full story, didn't know my connection to her past troubles, only that a mysterious phoenix had believed in her when no one else would. "I don't know who you really are," Raquel said, her voice thick with emotion as she looked around my office, at the art on the walls, my art. "But what you did, it gave me back my life, my passion. And you're giving so many young digital artists a chance they wouldn't have otherwise." "The art world needs more people like you, Raquel," I said. "People who see potential where others don't." Her eyes landed on a large screen displaying my latest NFT, a complex evolving piece titled Calculated Trajectory. It was already garnering critical acclaim. "That's breathtaking," she breathed. "It feels like it's telling a story." After she left, I stood before the piece myself. The swirling patterns of light and shadow, the intricate dance of creation and destruction, it was all there. "They said my art was worthless," I mused, a faint, knowing smile on my lips. The city lights, now familiar companions, twinkled back at me. "Turns out it was worth everything, especially," I thought, "their downfall and my own hard-won, unshakable rise."